We're going to go ahead and get started. So I thank you all again for joining us today. I know some of you, our panelists from before, have joined us up here. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen in the room today. I have the honor, distinct privilege of introducing our next keynote speaker. We heard an incredible story from Rena before last evening, and today another incredible story from Valeria Aloe, TO4. Valeria is a speaker, an award-winning author of her newest book, The Uncolonized Latinas, Transforming Our Mindsets and Rising Together. She's also the founder of the Rising Together movement. She's going to speak all about that today, so you'll hear a little bit more soon. She's the first in her family to attend college and to access professional spaces. Valeria has worked over 20 years in brand management, business development, finance, and leading companies across 7 countries, including Procter & Gamble, Citibank, Reckitt Benckiser, and PwC. She founded the Rising Together movement with the mission of driving economic inclusion and closing the Latina leadership gap and wealth gaps. Her work with Latinas and other women unlearned the cultural messages and mindsets that have been holding them back. And she hopes to equip allies with the knowledge and tools to become more assertive leaders and mentors of diverse talent. Her work has earned her several awards, including the Top 50 Women in Business in New Jersey in 2020, and the 5th most influential Hispanic in New Jersey in 2021. Her book was recently awarded first place in a nonfiction category of the New York Book Festival, among 14 other national and international recognitions. She holds degrees in business administration and finance from the Catholic University in Argentina, an MBA from the Great Tuck School of Business, and a Master in Spiritual Sciences. She currently serves at Tuck's Latin American and Caribbean Council. Valeria attended Tuck with her husband, Gonzalo, and became an avid snowboarder at the Dartmouth Skiway. She particularly enjoyed about her cultural and social settings here by organizing Latino parties and coordinating the iconic annual Argentinian barbecue. I am so honored to have met Valeria over the summer at the Tuck Alumni Diversity Conference in New York, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you today. So she's going to speak, and then we'll have a brief fireside chat where I get to ask her some questions that we've thought of together, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So as she speaks, really think about anything you'd like to ask her as she's spoken, about all these different topics that can relate to so many people, not just our Latinas in the room, but so many people from different backgrounds. So I hope that you will enjoy her message as much as I have. Let's give.
Thank you. Gracias. Hola. How's everybody? It's a pleasure for me to be here, particularly because this year, it has been 20 years. 20 years ago, I was a first-year student here, and there was no way I wanted to have visibility my first day at Tuck. I wanted to hide. I came from Latin America. I felt very inadequate. So there is some sort of feeling of coming back, a sense of healing to me to be here today about the experience that I had 20 years ago, which I will share more about. But today we're going to be talking about unlearning cultural messages of inadequacy and lack to thrive. So let me share a little bit about where this all started. As Stephanie said, I'm from Argentina, from a very small town in Argentina. A small rural town in Argentina where we had, I believe, more cows than human beings. Yes. And I'm from a very humble family. So my parents, from an early stage in my life, they had a dream that I would be the first one to go to college. And that was a big deal for my family because one of my grandmothers was one of 17 children, and she was sent to work in the farms. They had no shoes on their feet, and they had to work on the land since they were 5, 6 years old. My other grandmother was sent to help clean homes, so she had to stand on a stool and wash dishes. Then the next generation had a little easier. My parents, my mom went to high school, but she could not go anywhere else. That's what was available for women back then in a small town, no college. And my father had to start working at 11 years old, so he didn't have the opportunity to even go to high school. So for them to have a daughter to go to college was a big dream. And something that I heard all my life was, sí se puede, you can do this, you got this. And I really embrace that mission. So looking back into what makes a courageous leader is to hold that vision of possibility, even when you have no idea how it's going to happen, and to dream really big. My parents had no idea how they were going to pay for my education, how I was going to move to Buenos Aires. They had no idea at all, but they held the vision. I embraced the vision and I went with it. So I moved to Buenos Aires at the age of 18 and I started to work full-time while attending college. So one day in a very small accounting firm, we were only 3 people. One day walking into the building, I saw a sign that said PwC. And I'm like, I have no idea what PwC is, but it was a nice sign. And I'm going to walk in. Yeah. And I'm going to walk in and have this interview. I had no idea what the job was about. And I was hired as for an internship for 6 months. So that was my first experience in the corporate world. Being the first one, I had absolutely no roadmap. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to dress to show up. So it was a learning experience that I had to try and learn and experiment and adjust. That's how it was. So later on, this friend says, oh, Procter & Gamble is hiring for marketing. And I'm like, what is marketing? That sounds cool. I may try that too. So I interviewed with Procter & Gamble and I switched in my career from auditing to marketing before coming to tech. So 2002 comes, actually 2001, Argentina has a huge crisis. And there is an opportunity. We got married with my husband Gonzalo in 2001. There is an opportunity to move abroad because Argentina was shrinking as an economy. And we decided to come here for an MBA to the US. We had no money, so we visited not one school. Everything was done on paper, so no Zoom, nothing like that. And we showed up in Hanover, New Hampshire in 2002 after crying in Buenos Aires, leaving our families, not having a ticket to go back. We showed up here, and that's where the magic started. 2004, we both graduated. I haven't even aged since then, as you can see. So, but life went on. We graduated. We had huge student loans, and we continued our corporate careers. I had children, Valentina, who is now 15, and Tommy, 13, 15 months apart. That was crazy. Yeah, and you know, life takes you places. And for me, it was very hard to embrace, and I heard this in the panel right before this conversation. It's very hard to embrace, you know, who am I? I want to be a mother, and I also invested so much in my education. Ancestors invested for me to be here where I am. So am I going to walk away from this investment? My culture is telling me that I need to be the mother. I need to be there full time. That's a message that I had received. So huge struggle. I tried to do both. It worked out for some time. I could say 7 to 8 years. And in 2016, I burnt out. Now, a few lessons there. Number one is, as courageous leaders, doors will open, and courageously go through the doors. That's what I have done. Opportunities opened. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I went through them, right? And then with 2016, that experience of burning out and that challenging experience of really being in the darkness, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, was very scary. But believe me, that with every challenge, there is a blessing. And going through the fire of being uncomfortable, of not having visibility, to me was the best thing that happened in my life. And I'm going to be talking about that today. So what happened in 2016 is I burnt out, physically, emotionally exhausted, and I decided to just leave my job. I had the first time in my life that I didn't have another offer. And I said, I'm going to walk away from this corporate life because I cannot do this anymore. And I will take 6 months off and see what happens. Because I had a lot of energy, I went to the gym, to these crazy classes, and this woman next to me is lifting 15 pounds and she hits me on the side of my head. So I get a concussion. Yes. Then a week later, because I didn't have much balance, I dropped a water bottle on my foot and I broke my foot. So I was on a cast, and then a few other events that happened, but I was essentially stopped and I had to be by myself in my room for 2 weeks with no phones, with nothing, just with myself. And I think that was the first time that I was with myself, the first time that I had that deeper sense of connection and just realizing that I had been like a walking brain, you know, always for more, going for more, going for more, but not connecting with my heart, which is what Rina was talking about that yesterday, right? So 2016 was huge in my life. And I said, my question was, what's my purpose? Why am I even here, right? I was not happy. I didn't find a sense of purpose of waking up excited every day to do anything. So I said, what am I here for? And the question more became, how can I give back? Because I have received so much and I got places, all these corporations, countries, 3 languages. How can I help others as well? And I allowed myself to be guided. And essentially what happened is I ended up discovering a new stage in my life, and we're going to get into that now. It's like you live many lives in one lifetime. But before we go there, we're going to launch a poll because I want to know about you, how this may resonate with you. So I will ask that you please use your phones and that you, if you don't have the Wi-Fi on, turn it on so that this works. And we're going to be asking you, who is here? Who are you? So we're going to go to menti.com in a little bit, and we're going to insert a code that will bring up some responses, potential responses. And you will choose any or all that apply to you. It's actually the other one. Yeah. So who is in the room? You will have options like, I'm the first one in my family to attend college. I'm the first one in my family to pursue an MBA. English is my second language. I am a woman of color. I am not a woman of color, but I am an ally. So all those options will come up. So let's see who is in the room. Let's get to know each other a little bit. So you need to go to menti.com and you need to insert the code 31365419. So we're going to start seeing the results showing up live. How cool is that? I love this tool. Got you, wow. More than half of us are the first in our families to our professions. Did you know that before coming here? More than half, the first in our families to our profession. Many of us, the first in our families to pursue an MBA. Really cool. And we have many allies and many women of color as well. This is very powerful. So when you are the first one to be in certain spaces, what happens is that you don't have a roadmap, and sometimes it feels very uncomfortable. And that's where the courageous leader needs to come out to stand up, yeah? So I'm gonna share a little bit of what happened after 2016, but essentially, I got immersed in the Latino community for the first time. I decided to go to an event, Chamber of Commerce, surrounded by Latinos. I had been the only Latina in the room so far in corporate spaces. And I started to work, this master's in spiritual sciences that Stephanie mentioned before. I had to do a lot of work, soul searching, and also understanding, how did I hit a wall? I was a poster child from a small town, first to college, first to corporate America, first to move to the US, first to speak English, first to pursue an MBA in an Ivy League, hit a wall, and it was all dark. What happened? And I started to see that I had certain messages that I had believed in from my culture when I grew up, when I came to the US. I started to believe in some information that was not serving me, that was holding me back. And because I tried to overcompensate instead of healing that or unlearning, I compensated by working harder, I burnt out. But I started to see patterns of behavior, the same behaviors in the Latino community. And I started to see, wow, this is not just me. This is happening to many, but we don't talk about it. And over time, after I wrote the book Uncolonized Latinas, the message resonated with many more beyond the Latino community. So I'm here today to share with you those cultural messages. The research started with the Latino community, but it has resonated with women from all over. So there will be something here for you. You will take something home from what I'm going to share. Not everything may apply to you or may apply in different degrees, but there is something, I promise, in here for you. Now, this research is unprecedented. I started to interview women, and in half of the interviews, we cried. These are very vulnerable moments where I'm going to share with you, and we usually, as women, don't talk about these things. We may feel shame, it feels uncomfortable. So if you feel any sense of being uncomfortable, we will let it go. We're going to look at this not through the eyes of judgment, but through the eyes of hope and possibility for change. But I want to share with you, before Stephanie and I sit for a fireside chat, I want to share with you the research of what women have expressed, how we hold ourselves back. And everything started with, as Dean Slaughter said yesterday, curiosity. When I started to see some statistics, this country is amazingly diverse and will continue to become increasingly diverse. Look at 2020, 60% white Americans and 40% diverse, right? But 2060, almost 60% diverse. But when you look into leadership spaces or wealth creation spaces, we see gaps. And I started to ask myself, why is this? And these gaps have been quite unchanged since the 80s. I was probably not even born by then. I had been. I was 5 years old. So why? The curiosity of why is this happening? But more than anything is, are we really powerless? The system is hard to change. It's a massive machinery that is changing quite slowly, as we know, but it's changing, right? And the question becomes, is there anything we can do to accelerate this change? Because it feels really, it feels really disempowering to feel that you cannot do anything to drive that change that needs to happen. And I started to look into this cultural mindset that I mentioned before. What are these? And when you look into the iceberg, what you see at the top is really the surface level. Our behaviors, our results, that's what people see about us. But when you look underneath the water, that's when you find what influences the behaviors. And I started to see through research that we are influenced to believe some things about ourselves, to behave in certain ways that end up not being resulting in the results that we want in our lives. Therefore, we, in a way, exacerbate those gaps that I was showing before, the leadership and wealth gaps. And most interestingly is the human brain works in a way, and I come from a business background, okay? I got fascinated with all of this. The way the brain works is to simplify life, right? To simplify everything. So there is a lot under the water that happens because life needs to be easier with so much stimuli that we receive. 95% of all the thinking, of all these influences that we have are unconscious. So things that happen to us, we do not even know they are happening until we talk about them. And the most pervasive part is they get passed on from generation to generation. So my invitation for us is we're here to break the chain. And it's not just one generational, the change of these ways of thinking. It's ancestral, how women have been seen, the places that we had in society, the contributions that we were made to believe we could do, or the spaces that we were, kind of influenced to belong to. That has been very ancestral, centuries. So we have the opportunity today, by looking at this information, bringing awareness and creating change. And as a mother of 2 teenagers, I had to do the work myself for me to break the change, first for me, and then to influence my kids and to raise them in a way that creates for them a new world of possibilities. But first I had to do it with myself. I love this picture that represents the conference, because the only way to break this chain as women is to help each other. The only way out is up and together. And I love this picture. So this is all about helping each other, doing it differently, and sharing not just how or what we may struggle with from a vulnerable place, but also helping us understand what really works, how to create that roadmap and that change. So are you ready? Yes? Okay. So through these conversations on very vulnerable spaces and all that crying that happened with many women, leaders in their spaces, there was a common element, feeling inadequate. We feel inadequate and lacking. Why? Because the model of leadership and success It's a certain way, it's male and white. And compared to that, we are made to believe that we are here. We were influenced to believe that we are here. And that creates a gap. So how does the gap show in your behaviors? Bypassing growth opportunities. When you feel lacking or inadequate, you believe you need to check 100% of the boxes. We know by now that a lot of men apply to jobs not checking 100% of the boxes, but we feel we need to. We were meant and influenced to believe that. There is another one that is disowning your victories. And this is how it looks like. If I receive a compliment, oh, Valeria, great job. I used to say, yeah, but I forgot this part. And then I mispronounced half of the words. And so that's disowning. And we do that a lot as women. Instead of saying, thank you for seeing the value in the work that I do. So the power of words, right? And how we, sometimes that feeling of lack shows up verbally and people start saying, oh, maybe Valeria is not that great. She's the one saying so anyways. Like she's making up excuses for herself, right? Another one is overcompensating, which I have been an expert on. I've been pushing by working harder, and in 2016, I burnt out. And my favorite one, what I bring to the table will not make a difference. That was me at TAG 20 years ago. If you would have told me, like, when I was here, my first day at TAG, that I would be talking here, probably would have died of a heart attack. Super scary. And that's in page 50 of my book. The experience of being at TAG for the first time in Cook Auditorium. Next to my husband that seemed more confident, he's not a first generation to college. He has another path. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm coming from a so-called third world country. What am I going to contribute here? Everybody seems super smart. I'm going to hide and try to be invisible and see if I pass. I may not even approve. They may kick me out. Am I going to succeed in this place? And then I had another thought that I was sharing last night, that is, are they going to turn me into something that I'm not? You know, because I sensed there was going to be transformation. And to me, transformation is the number one word of my TAG experience. Super powerful. So in those classes, I tried to hide. There was nowhere to hide. And I'm so thankful. And Aloe was the first one that pushed me. In one of her classes, she said, these international students are not participating so much. So I'm going to have you all do a presentation about your home countries. I thought I wanted to take a plane right to Buenos Aires that day. Yeah, I'm like, what is this woman talking about? Like, no. It was out of my comfort zone entirely. And I think I shook for a week after the presentation. But she opened that door to me, you know, as an ally. And she helped me embrace that transformation. So that's the powerful space, but still struggling a lot internally with all these feelings. Now, there are other messages that we received from the Latin American culture that may resonate with you, and I'm going to cover just a few. Just work hard. This is put your head down, do the work, somebody will notice and reward you for it. It doesn't work that way. Why? Because when we just work hard, we stop seeking for those mentors and sponsors. We need help to build our careers. It's not just about working hard. It's about building those networks. And also, we may tend to wait for others to give us what we need. We just put the work, and I've been doing this. It works. I have to say you have to do the work, but it doesn't get you past manager or director level. Proven. So it works for a while, but it may burn you out. So better to start building those networks early on. Another message, be humble. Very Latin American. Be humble, don't talk about yourself. That's a show off. ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What will people think about you and say? We don't do that. We don't talk about ourselves. So that becomes a hurdle in America because when we're too humble, excessive modesty, you don't share your victories. You don't build your professional brands. So that becomes a hurdle. And when you become a manager, you may feel absolutely uncomfortable advocating for others and helping others build their brands as well. Another one, is this resonating with you? I will quiz you in a little bit. Get ready. Be thankful. Be overly thankful. And this looks like gratitude is a must in my life and it's a major pillar. But this message of being thankful looks like I'm going to be just thankful. And it has an underlying tone of it is not okay to go for more. If you go for more, you're greedy. If you go for more, you're aggressive. So just be thankful for what you have and don't go for more. And the other part of that is, if I go for more, I may lose what I already built. And this is very cultural, particularly for first generations into spaces. Your parents, people in your family may not have had your experience. And I've heard this, oh, you got up until there, that's already good. Why do you want more? Look at all you have already. When are you coming back home? When are you coming back to Argentina? Okay, so I've heard that. And it's from a place of love, but still there is that message of, wow, am I being greedy because I want more? So that holds you back. Another one that is very interesting is don't rock the boat. So it's like, do not create conflict, do not be the voice that creates dissent, that do not be the hand that raises up in a meeting. And I've been doing that all my life, and then I had this amazing idea, and then the person next to me shared that idea, and then it was great, everybody celebrated, and I said, I had that idea a week ago, and I didn't share it because I thought it was going to be controversial or whatever. So that happens, and we do that. So I'm gonna quiz you now. If you take your phones, this is a moment of self-reflection. We're going to look into so far how all of this information has been resonating with you. And as the next step after this, we're going to transition to the fireside chat to uncover how do we change this. So please share with me how, based on everything that I have shared, you feel right now that these messages, cultural messages, systemic messages, have been holding you back. And here are some options. I feel I need to work harder and tend to work myself past exhaustion. I tend to minimize my successes or feel uncomfortable talking about them. I doubt myself to the point that I let opportunities and projects pass me by. I tend to not ask people to be my mentor or sponsor or don't request time from them. I tend to not ask for the resources and support I need to succeed. And I do not generally share about my culture with others. So please pick only two, your top two. Let's see where we are. See a trend already. So first of all, I want to say that it takes courage to look within, to look inside. It takes a lot of courage to look inside of you and see what is holding you back. It's easier to pretend it's not there. It's easier to deny what makes us uncomfortable. But as courageous leaders, any growth comes from within, and it starts by looking at the uncomfortable. So as we can see here, the first one is, I tend to minimize my successes or feel uncomfortable talking about them. If I share with you that I did maybe 40 to 50 speaking engagements in corporate America all over the place, and this is one that comes up first for women of all seniority levels, including director and up executive. We all do this. We are not alone. We all struggle with the same thing. The second one, I feel I need to work harder and tend to work myself past exhaustion. That's I have seen that mostly in Wall Street. That's very present in Wall Street and also consulting firms. That we believe we need to kind of do more for people to see that we're successful, that we need to do more to keep up with that illusion that success is this and we are here, okay? So why are we doing all of this? Why are we looking within? What's the point of doing all of this and sharing research, putting a dirty laundry here at lunchtime? What's the point? The point is to look at this as outdated information that as women we have carried for centuries and that really become interference and disconnect us from the powerful essence of who we are. So if we are going to become those powerful leaders, comfortable in our shoes, with a strong voice and willing to create change in our communities and workplaces, we need to start cleaning the interference. Get rid of that noise because that's a huge distraction. So that's where now we're going to transition to, so what do we do with this? Yeah? Excellent.
Let's give a round of applause before we get to the class.
Let's try to, yes.
Can everyone see us okay
Try to
here?
see it
We're
on the
good? I
floor.
think we're okay. Perfect. Hopefully we don't fall off the stage.
Hopefully we don't. That would be memorable.
This isn't a real stage, so we're making it work. This one on? Okay, great. Well, thank you. Valeria, already what you shared, so many people in this room, not just Latinas, but women across so many different levels have experienced each of those things. It's probably hard to pick just the top two that you struggled with, at least for me. I, could have chosen a lot of those. So I'm really excited to take a little bit deeper look into that. And so as we kind of turn the page and look ahead, I want to think about what we can actually do for the people in this room, especially from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, cultural differences. What can we do to become more conscious of these mindsets that are limiting us and these messages that have been ingrained in how we've been raised or maybe the setting that we're in now? How do you recommend that we start to become more aware?
Yes, so what we did today is super powerful. That is being aware of how we've been held back and how our own way of thinking or seeing the world is really having an impact and exacerbating those gaps that we see out there, which I hope you felt some sense of relief that you're not alone, that is happening to a lot of women, millions and millions and millions of women. So the first step is that awareness. And sometimes awareness looks like being so present in the moment, particularly when you're in a meeting. Like something that really triggered me in my career was to be the only Latina in a room with a lot of white men, sometimes 20 of them. And I felt so uncomfortable. That was a trigger. And that's when all these behaviors started to show up, trying to be invisible, not speaking up, or super like holding myself back. So what helped me is to really learn how to breathe deeply, to calm down my nervous system, and to be present in the moment so that I could ask myself the question, am I really uncomfortable sharing this information because maybe this is not the right setting and this has to be more of an individual conversation offline? Or am I being held back by all these ancestral messages of be humble, just work hard, don't rock the boat? What is really going on? So that's part one, is awareness in the present moment. What it does at the end of the day is it gives you a choice. When you are present and you can see how you feel, and usually starts with physical sensations. Rina spoke about that yesterday, that your gut, or even you get tense, your shoulders. So it starts with that, is to become so aware and to be so present that you can see a choice for yourself and that you can be kind of the observer of yourself as things are happening. So that's step number one. Step number two is to pivot or reframe. And we were having another conversation with Rina about this earlier. This is all neuroscience and is creating new brain pathways. That's what it is about, because we go in that lane. How about changing to this lane? It takes that being present, that being super aware, but also the intentionality. And that part starts with, we heard this yesterday. I love that it's all, connecting. Yesterday at dinner time, one of you were saying these voices that I'm hearing, right? So it's replacing those voices, learning to see, I have this voice that is telling me that I'm not good enough, that I don't have what it takes. Replacing that by a positive, supportive message towards yourself is absolutely important. To kind of change the cassette, the MP3, to change that inner narrative is super intentional, but we need to start talking to ourselves in a way that is empowering, to do self-coaching and to be really our best champions. So it starts within with that message. Now, I've heard a lot of, but I have these voices still coming up and I'm pushing them. Don't push them, because that makes them louder. Something that a friend from Colombia shared with me, she's kind of a coach, a mentor. She said, when those voices of negativity, limitations, of judgment show up, just look at them and be thankful. You are there to keep me safe. I understand you're here to keep me safe. Thank you so much for trying to keep me safe, but I'm going to try this. This will work out. So instead of saying, no, I don't want to hear this, getting all, tensed up. And the third step, so it was awareness, reframing or pivoting within your mind. And the third step is really action, because I can't tell myself, I got this, I'm going to speak up, I'm brave. But unless I raise my hand in that meeting and I speak up, nothing will change. So the invitation is a micro step. It's not, I'm going to go from not speaking at TAC 20 years ago to a massive 5,000 people conference a month later. No, it's what's the micro step? What's the tiniest possible change? And when you take action through micro steps, it builds that self-confidence, and then you can go for more.
I think that's excellent. And I think, one other way to think about it is sometimes you may not have the courage to do that for yourself yet, but a way to practice it, and it's something I've experienced, I've been on the receiving end, is someone, or, you sharing that with someone else. Maybe you see a friend or another female you work with. Maybe you don't even know her well, and maybe they're not speaking up, or maybe they're being shut down. This is our time as allies of women and anyone that's being cut off in certain settings. How can we step in and say, oh, I think actually she had an idea. I think she was saying something. Do you want to finish that? And creating space,
Yes.
Sometimes harder to do that just for ourselves, but it's almost easier to practice doing it for someone else to start off. And the TUC community, I think for me, the first time I had this kind of experience personally was in the very first semester of TUC, in a big classroom for the first time. I guess I hadn't realized that I was doing this. I was kind of putting a little damper on everything before I said it. So this is just my opinion. I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert in this area, but I think, I had this experience, and I would, qualify everything before I shared it. And someone I didn't even know at the time, which some of you got to meet last night, Destiny, who's our current president here, didn't even know her. We were just getting to know each other. She came over in Stell Hall while we were doing homework. She's like, do you mind if I share something with you? And I'm like, oh no, like, what did I do? What did I say? And she's like, don't need to qualify things when you share your experience. She's like, you have the experience. You are qualified in this area. Share your story. Don't try to bring everything down and make it softer or easier for people to hear. And it was eye-opening because, I didn't even notice that I was doing that. These messages that I had been raised with and these mindsets that were ingrained, this is how I had learned to navigate the world, not be too much or not to be too loud or aggressive. And it just made me step back and think, you know what? Yeah, when I have something to say, I just say it. But it takes courage to do those things.
It takes courage.
And so I recommend for all the women here to maybe just take that step to do that for someone else to start. And then you can harness a little bit more of that power yourself.
That's very powerful what you shared, because when I was in the middle of my struggles in corporate America, I had a conversation with my boss, a white man, an amazing ally. And I said, I struggle with giving my opinion here because it was a very kind of intense culture, I would say. So people would just say whatever. And I was super afraid of saying something and then triggering a whole discussion. And I thought that was going to backfire. And I said to him, I'm very afraid of saying something here in this setting. And he started to prompt me. He said, when he knew because he could tell that I have something to say in a meeting, he said, Valeria, what do you think? And I tell you, the first days, it was worse than TAC. I was blushing and sweating and, oh my gosh, swallow me, hide me under the table, whatever. But then it started to feel more natural, And I have to say that TAC in that sense has been uncomfortable for me because this cold calling, but that's why I'm talking about the transformation, right? And public speaking has been to me so scary, particularly my second language, so absolutely scary that it's mind-blowing to me how 20 years later, I wrote a book in my second language and I just did 15 speaking engagements with 2,000 people in 3 weeks. And looking back at how that happened, it started here. That's where it started. And I wish somebody had told me, this thing that you feel that you want to hide and be invisible is cultural. It is okay. It's going to go away at some point. You're going to learn and overcome it. It takes patience and so much self-compassion. But if somebody had told me, and that's part of, this visual that we have in the conference of women helping each other go uphill, right? That's what it is about. And that's why I appreciate being here so much with you today, because I'm hoping that if there is a message that you take home with you today is that I am not alone, and there is a network of people to help me out. So that example of how you help others and build that allyship, super important. Yeah.
It took us a while to get that logo right. I'm not going to lie. We were trying to convey, like, what does that feel like? What is it like? And I think that image does help us because it's definitely uphill, but you have to turn around and bring people along. So I think we nailed it finally. But moving on to kind of another subtopic within this. So as we saw that number that came up here, a lot of us are the first in our families to access college or professional spaces, just like yourself, me as well. I know I've shared with you, I'm part of the LIFT group that we have here, low income first gen group. So it's daunting to step into even these spaces that are so welcoming and so friendly because, you know, you don't have maybe some of those life experiences or travel experiences or cultural things that you can bond over. So, you know, some of our experiences have changed our views about ourselves and also maybe limited some of the opportunities that we think are available to us. And, you know, there's a big saying going around right now, especially for messages and media for young girls. If I can see it, I can be it. And that's been a big media campaign lately. And for me, you know, didn't really know anybody, didn't have those examples of people who had women or anyone that had college or MBAs. And so it really felt like I didn't belong. So it wasn't just like the challenge of imposter syndrome being like a concept for me. I felt like I really was an imposter in some spaces because, you know, I hadn't done these things, but I would pretend to not let anybody know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think for that kind of space, how do we work past some of those personally limiting ideas that we have for ourselves and perhaps, you know, what you've done to, as you said, even just sitting next to your husband who wasn't in the same exact place as you coming to tech. How did you navigate that? And for me, the challenge is not being bitter about some of those things. So I don't know if you've dealt with any of that or like to share.
Yeah, to me, the first step was to realize that I was in survival mode and that it was ancestral, that my parents had been in survival mode, my grandparents, but I had an opportunity for living in a different way. Survival almost killed me in 2016. I ended up in that emergency room. So it took a lot of, I would say, really doing that soul searching and what do I really want in my life? What makes me happy? I tell you, in 2016, when I stopped my corporate career and I took that time, it got very scary at some point because I had decided in 2007 when my daughter was born I had already taken a step out of my corporate career. I was doing consulting, right? And with the same hours or even worse, I have to say, even worse. But at some point, I wonder, did I make a mistake by leaving my corporate job? Because I could see my husband going up and up and up. And I'm like, I'm smarter than him. Don't tell him. No, but seriously, I'm like, I could be there where he is. And I'm struggling here. And then when I opened my own business, knocking on those corporate doors, not one would open, not one. And I'm like, I just come from this corporate world and doors are not opening. Did I make a mistake by making these choices? And that was very hard because I had absolutely no clarity what I was going to do next. I really embraced that I wanted to have this business to help Latina women, but the doors were not opening. So a lesson there to me was, looking back, that was perfect. And if you ask me, would you have decided something different to become a consultant after your daughter was born? No. A few years ago, if you asked me, I would have said, you know, maybe. But today I say no. And that became part of really understanding, what do I want? Remember that I mentioned that vision my parents planted on my mind. When I came here, I lost my vision because I tried to fit in. I tried to be somebody that I was not. And I lost a vision for myself. And I was trying to go, I was going in circles in a way. So when I learned that, wow, I can have a vision of what's possible for me, and that can be my own vision of what I want, right? And hold the vision, and then own my space and own my life. That changed absolutely everything. You know, to reconnect with the essence of who I am and what do I really want, really open the doors everywhere. Yeah.
So it sounds like, you know, to succeed, you had to take a step back and reflect and then redirect and then put in the work to go towards this new vision
Yeah.
that you had identified for yourself. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about putting in this hard work. I think for those of us from so many of these backgrounds, like hard work is the only thing that has opened doors for us, just pure effort. And I think, as we change and move into some of these other spaces, that hard work and that work ethic has to evolve with us to not just be survival, because that's what we've been for so long. And also we hope to pass down a healthier relationship generation to generation. So, how has your hard work ethic evolved to become more effective in your future career? Are there, different things that you've worked on, building your own brand or things like that, where you've helped focus in on changing and advancing your work ethic into a place where it's not just survival?
Great question. And as I said, having teenagers who have this influence of social media, that life should be perfect and easy, and they don't see what it takes. A constant conversation in my house is you have to do the work. You have to do the work. Because if you think about a brand, my marketing side comes up. Why do you buy a brand? It's because you trust the brand will do the work that you need to buy the brand. Otherwise, you don't buy again. So that's what happens at work with us as well. People need to trust that we will do the work. And that takes putting the work, but with balance. So just working hard is not going to work for us. It's not working. We have these systemic gaps that still exist. We are burning out. The rates of burnout for women during COVID were very high. So 2 things that have worked for me. Number 1, taking care of myself first with no guilt, which as a wife, daughter, mother has been absolutely difficult as a lesson, but I had no choice. And the guilt shows up and I thank the guilt. Thank you very much, but this is my time to take care of myself. And that means physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, all dimensions. Every day I look into those 4 dimensions and I see where am I imbalanced and what do I need to adjust. Micro steps, maybe it's a 10-minute walk in nature, whatever it is. But having that sense of, unless I take care of myself first, this is not going to work out for anybody, particularly then when you have a family, it doesn't work out. So number 1, yes, do the work, but always put yourself first. And number 2, the evolution of hard work to me is also being a voice, having a voice, building your brand, as we said before. That number 1 bar that showed up in there is showing that as a group, as a collective, and that's, as I said, what I have seen outside as well in corporate America, and in many organizations, even nonprofits, is we have a hard time talking about ourselves, about our victories, and it feels very unnatural. So do the work, it's needed, balanced, take care of yourself, but then go out into the world and share really who you are and your achievements. A rule of thumb from my interviews and research is roughly 20 to 25% of your time has to be about selling your work. And that's not being a Friday morning going around the office and talking to people, this is what I have done. No. It's inserted with art in every conversation you have. And building your brand is not just talking about the amazing things that, yes, you need to share what you have achieved, but it's also about when you have a problem, a hurdle, it really builds your brand when you show, I have this problem, I'm facing this situation, but you come up with a plan that people can see that you looked into alternative solutions and that you thought about possibilities and where to go and chose one. That builds your brand even more, I would say, than talking about the successes. But they both need to work together.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult because we always feel, especially as women, that if we share any of our success and we say it out loud, and we've all probably received feedback like, oh, maybe like chill on the talking about yourself and your accomplishments. It's so easy to seem like you're very self-absorbed if you share 1 ounce of your success or things you've done that you're really proud of. Another fun way to do this, I have found, is to be the hype woman for one of your friends. Like the best way to find out someone's an incredible person is for someone else to tell you about it. Your brand is built up by having other people confirm that you are amazing. So I do this with my friends. I'm like, maybe I know that they're quiet and they won't share their success. And it's my favorite thing to do, to brag on them. And if you have that opportunity in the workplace as well, if someone's talking about a project or whatever, really call out the fact that, especially if it's one of your female colleagues, like say that, yes, she did a great job doing XYZ, and give people the credit, because sometimes it's just hard to get that out there and have the opportunity. And sometimes conversations are happening when you're not there.
Yes.
And so you have to, if you're in that space, once again, reach out and be an ally to those women who don't have the voice at that time.
And imagine if we start doing, all of us start doing that. We will change the way the system is set up. We will change it because we don't do it enough for each other. We just don't do it. We have been in survival mode for too long. So the more we do it for each other, the more we will all elevate, and go to the next stage of how we want this system to be,
And so kind of on that concept, if we think about allyship in general and how women can support women, but overall here, if we think about taking allyship to the next level in a community like Tuck, where we've just discussed, it is very difficult to have a fully diverse community up here in the middle of the woods sometimes. And so what would you recommend? How can we be better allies to people in these different groups and strengthen our community and really value other people's cultures? And I guess for me, what I've been trying to do in my, year and a few months at Tuck is to give space for people. Maybe they're from a different cultural background and maybe they're not comfortable sharing about it. Give them space, ask them what holidays they're celebrating, what they're doing right now, and be interested. Like for me, that's what I've been trying to do. And it's a wonderful place to try and do that because we celebrate every different cultural holiday. And I think so many people, it's their first time maybe getting involved with, we have like a huge Diwali celebration coming up. It's one of the best things of the year. And our trip to Peru with 140 Tuckies, like these are opportunities here at Tuck where we have to do that. But overall, once we even leave this, little bubble of Tuck, how do we become better allies for people in these communities, work and at Tuck?
There is one experience that is my first day at Tuck when my husband and I landed from Argentina with a very tiny car in JFK, and we tried to load everything that we had in there. And there was not even a space to see through the rear view mirror. And I had been crying for the full trip. I was absolutely exhausted. And we drove all the way here in July. We had to park somewhere to take a nap. And then we found that the house that we had rented online was a shack, essentially, with no heat in Vermont. And we lived there for 1 year, by the way. Yeah. So it was beyond scary. And when I came to Tuck Hall with my husband, we said, let's check it out. We had never been to campus, ever, because we didn't have the money to come here. And we said, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And we went into the building and Sally Yeager was there. Allyship story. She came to us, she gave us a hug. She knew our names. I'm like, wow, from a picture, I guess, she knew who we were. From Argentina, she knew everything about us. And that memorable moment changed my full experience at Tuck. It takes one person. And it's not about the words, it's about the energy and the experience. She was so welcoming. She said, do you want to take a walk? Let me show you. Welcome, welcome. That changed my life entirely that one day. And it's an experience that I have shared 20 years later. I share that. So being an ally is about connecting deeply with the person. Being an ally, and this is something that I have learned from my own book, when I interviewed Afro-Latinas, was eye-opening to me, the experience of my Latina sisters, Afro-Latinas, people who I knew for 10 years, I didn't know what they had gone through growing up. And the conversation became, how can I help you? And this is what I heard. Don't empower me. I have the power already. Don't empower me. I just need you when you're in a space where I don't have access to open a door for me, to make a referral, to put the word out there. But start with the question, how can I help you? That's the best. And honestly, many even men that I have interviewed, they ask me, how can I be a better ally? Because I'm afraid of making a mistake, of assuming or of using the wrong words. And it starts with the conversation of how can I help you? What can I do for you? How can I help you? But allyship is more profound. And part of that is allowing ourselves to have the conversations like the one we're having today. This is building allyship. This is giving us a new lenses of what people go through that we may not know, because it's, as I showed in the iceberg, it's under the water and we don't talk about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, that's an actionable thing. And I hope that we all start to even practice that now before you come to Tuck. Hopefully, we just practice that in our daily life, asking people. Actually, we have a great quote at Tuck, and it's a sticker on my laptop. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And it's just so it's not just what can I do for you? What do you need help? And then tell me more. If you're going to ask someone, if you want to help them, really follow through. Also, Tuck is big on that. You make a commitment, you follow through on that investment. It just is so much more valuable to everybody as a person. So we want to hear from you guys now, though. So we're going to transition away from these questions that I prepared, and I want to hear from you guys. So I think we're going to my other co-chairs will grab some other mics and we will get to you guys. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand. Also, if you don't need a mic, feel free to shout, but we'd love to hear from you. Yes, over here.
Happening up until today. Some doors just don't open. I learned not to take it personal. It takes resilience. It takes believing in who you are. No matter what the feedback around you is, believing in the power you have and keep going. But I experienced that up until today. So what I'm doing now is the Rising Together movement is going to different cities. And part of that is bringing Latinas to do the work for a full day. Transformation, mindset transformation, skill sets. And I wanted to bring Latinas who are underserved, from underserved communities. And the sponsors are not showing up so easily. They want to see the numbers, the results. We're just starting. And so those doors are not opening, but I'm not giving up. I really believe in this mission. So keep going, keep going. I tell you, I went through, I would say 2016 to 2021, knocking, the doors would not open. And I had to do the work with myself a lot. A lot of reflection, a lot of, when I'm triggered, there is something for me to heal, building up my self-confidence, my connecting with the essence of who I am and being comfortable bringing that out. There was a lot of work. And I thank those doors that didn't open. They taught me a big lesson. I would say many more than successes. But it's believing yourself, keep going, never give up. Keep going. And one door will open. And we had that experience with Rina this morning that we were talking about. Rina and I have like our sisters from another life. This morning, we tried to get into the building. No one door was open. And we had this same conversation. And I said, we need to just keep going and we'll find an open door to get into TAG. And that happened. So
well,
keep
sorry
going.
about that.
No, I think we went the wrong way. We were
okay. Well, yes. Well, we do try to maintain safety, but no. Thank you for it's a good reminder. But I think sometimes it is just pushing. Or maybe I also believe sometimes it's the right door at the wrong time. Maybe it's not that door right now for you. Maybe you have more to learn, more to investigate. I think sometimes the first option may be the easiest one, and it's compelling to take it. We heard from panelists who said no to jobs and looked into other things, not knowing what the future might hold, because there's maybe something more. And there's a lot of faith there as you step into that like unknown space, but knowing yourself and what you're capable of, you just keep knocking on the doors and you keep finding a new one. You keep searching for the new entrance to talk.
Yes.
So,
but there's something more is really true. Maybe this is not opening because you are meant for something even bigger than this. And you may be limiting yourself. I've done that. I went through that, I promise you. So it's hold the vision and keep going. One key example is 5 years ago, I went to knock some doors in corporate America saying, I have this research, I want to work with your Latinas. Oh no, we don't have anything for Latinas. 4 or 5 years later, I just couldn't keep up with the demand. But that's because I had initiated the conversations 5 years ago. So it seems that the results are not there, but you are planting a seed. And who knows what will happen down the road. Keep the faith and keep going.
Amazing. Another question. Over here? Hi.
In my parents, right? For instance, yeah. So, my book is in English, for instance, and my parents are waiting for the Spanish translation to really read what I wrote about. That will be very interesting. So I believe there is I had to put a lot of love into understanding that they did the best they could, that their mindsets were also influenced, that they were held back by the culture, and they did the best they could at every single step. Now, sometimes, honestly, I learned to navigate spaces. The person that shows up here is not the same person that shows up with it's the same person, but I wear a different suit. You know what I mean? It's like, if I talk to my parents in a very sophisticated language, I will lose them. They will not even understand what I do. They may not even understand today what I do. So I had to learn the art of communicating with different people, and that includes my family. I had to learn what may trigger them, so stay away from that. But I believe they were super scared a few years ago when they could see that I was in a dark hole and not figuring out what I wanted to do and not understanding. And as a survival mechanism, they wanted to be overprotective. But over time, as I started to come out of that space, they started to see that I was doing really well and happy, and they started to accept a few things. One of the key messages that I got was, when are you coming back to Argentina? When are you coming back? It's been 20 years now. I think that stopped maybe in year 15. No, maybe, yeah. And one day we sat down with my parents and they said, we see that you're so happy, that we see that's your space. So it takes acceptance from both sides, you know, and it takes the deep, to me, acceptance was they did the best and they keep doing the best with what they can. And thank God I had access to a lot more than they had. But acknowledging that I'm here because I stand on the shoulder of giants. I see my past, my grandmothers, I'm here because they paved the way. So that gratitude and that sense of, I honor who they are, but I also have my own journey. And it's my purpose, I'm gonna do it. No? Before the question. Powerful.
For that. Any other questions? Right over there. We probably have time for one more question after this. Great. Thank you so much for taking the time. So I know you mentioned burnout at the beginning of your discussion, and from the poll responses, it looked like a lot of people were feeling similar ways of working themselves to exhaustion. And I was just wondering if you had a way that we could potentially communicate those feelings towards demanding managers or people that are putting us in a position in which we feel like we need to be working this hard. Are there ways to kind of have those conversations so that you don't go towards burnout?
Very powerful. And I believe that's a struggle. It's not very accepted sometimes in some spaces. So it becomes very important that when you leave work, so first of all, that the experience that you have at work is a good one, right? And to really look into, if you're miserable, maybe that's not the space for you to blossom. You know, maybe that's not the space you need. And there are many other spaces that you could go into. But also to become super intentional about, I have a lot other hours, and what do I do with that? And to me, honestly, when I had those moments that I was so about to burn out, and that continued to happen after 2016, because I had this pattern. I'm aware of my pattern. So what do I do? Particularly in the last 3 weeks with Hispanic Heritage Month, my sleep habits, no phones after 8 p.m., like decompress the brain, like sleeping the hours that I need. It sounds basic, but it makes a big difference. Eating foods that are healthy, drinking plenty of water. That's super important. I don't watch the news. I barely watch any TV because I'm very conscious of what I put in my mind. And I'm very, very intentional in how I use my time in those spaces that I have, because sometimes you have to do the work. And it's intense at work, and there is a lot going on, but then how do you balance the rest of your life to help you? And throughout the day, when I was in those moments that, oh my gosh, I cannot even keep up, this is so overwhelming, the breathing consciously, like really calms your nervous system, deep breathing. Even in a meeting, people do not even realize that you're doing it, but it's a technique that really helps you. If there is something that I shared with my husband was the deep breathing technique, and he realized that he was breathing super shallow here in the chest. If there is one thing that he took away from everything that I have, spoke to him about, is the breathing part. It really is crazy how we, with stress, you get contracted and you don't breathe. So there are moments in life that are unavoidable. And because we are going for more, we are going uphill, going for more together. It's like climbing the Everest. Your shoes will feel very tight. You'll get exhausted. You will want to give up. Maybe at some point it's too cold, it's uncomfortable. That's part of life. It's part of the human experience. But then how do you take care of yourself, and being super calendarizing even time for yourself, even for meditation if you can, or taking a short walk, putting that in your calendar so that no one can take that away.
And I would just add, if you're in a position where you're facing burnout because maybe your manager's not recognizing all the work you're doing, write it down. If I've gone into a conversation where I'm going to ask for something, a different timeline or schedule, I'm going to show up with everything I've done. What's the evidence of my work? How can I show you that I've gotten my job done and I've done it well and I've done it on time? And maybe it doesn't take me 15 hours to do it. Maybe I can leave after 10 hours in the day. Speak up, but with the backup, so that they can say, you're right. No, you do get it done in that time frame. And it's okay. You don't have to stay all night for no reason. Or this is what I can accomplish in this day. I will be a better person if I rest and come back. But having those conversations, after you have evidence to back up, build some credibility, I think that's the time to kind of try to do that as well. One more question.
One more thing in there is I just remember, we have a tendency to say yes, of course, taking more than what we can handle. So before you say yes to a new project, or part of setting boundaries is, can I have time to think about it? Because it's so crazy how we say yes, and then we realize, oh my gosh, that's going to add 15 more hours to my day, and I don't have the resources. And so take the time to be in your own energy and really list out, what is this new project going to require if I say yes? And make the decision, ask for time. 1 day, 2 days is not too much. And to have that space with you to really understand what you're saying yes to.
And even if you're in a lower position where maybe you can't ask for time yet, I think it's okay to say, how would you like me to prioritize? I have XYZ on my plate already. What would you like me to focus on first? Because sometimes we just say yes, because that's what we also have been trained to do. We say, of course, how else can I get ahead? I must take it all on. Yeah. But it's like, at the end of the day, this is what I can do. What would you like me to prioritize? And then put it back to them to recognize how much you maybe already have on your plate. One more question. Anybody? Yes, let's go. Oh, sorry. Yep. Do we have a question? Right over there. Perfect.
Okay. I will try to make it very fast. I have a question about how you bring your culture with you as you continue to enter the spaces, because there seems to be what you said earlier about being a walking brain of just making sure you're showing up, doing the work, unlearning some of the cultural influences that you bring with you. But how do you make sure that you are also bringing the good aspects of your culture and bring it into the spaces that as you continue to grow?
Great question. And I believe my experience at TAC, my safe zone was to be with other Latinos who spoke Spanish. Very limited. I made a decision. I was in survival. Something that really worked as a start is to just show up in social events, to open up. And then I have to say that my 10th year reunion, I went back and I said, oh my gosh, you are so cool. I'm so sorry I didn't hang out with you more at TAC. Yeah, I got to know people in reunions because I was in survival. So part of sharing your culture is to show up. 95% of the work is to show up and to start feeling more comfortable. Drop, the survival, the need to survive, and start sharing who you are. I love to be part of the Argentinian barbecue. Aloe, when she had me share my culture there in the class, I was not comfortable, but everything, every little bit, that everything adds, every micro step adds. But it's all about the deeper human connection at the end of the day, and you opening up to being there, which I have to say the first year I didn't allow myself to open up. I was like, I don't want to talk. I'm like, so yeah, it starts with you and with being willing to open and to really realize, I don't need to be in survival here.
Well, thank you all for opening up with these questions. And thank you so much, Valeria, for sharing your story. And we have books for all of you. So we will be sharing that. It's a great book. I'm sadly due to burnout, not through the whole book yet, but it's already amazing. So I'm going
We'll
to
take care of the burnout
Yes,
later.
yes.
We'll talk about it.
But one final round of applause for Valeria.